Hello, welcome to the podcast. It's me, Kyle, and over here we have...
Yeah, I'm Daniel.
Yeah, it's Daniel, like always. It's the boys. We're back again. This time we're discussing a project we're working on, a sound replacement for the film Scott Pilgrim. You might have seen it before, you might not have. We picked specifically the fight scene between Scott and the second evil ex-boyfriend.
Yeah, Lucas Lee.
Lucas Lee.
Okay, so the first thing we're going to talk about is the project management, as usual, as we did last time. And this one was a little bit interesting because it wasn't one that we had originally scoped ourselves out for at the start of the trimester. It kind of came about due to the results of our last sound replacement project, The Wild Wild West. If you haven't seen that, you can check out our episode on that.
Yeah.
So this project was comprised of Carl, Josh and I, the same three people who worked on the Wild Wild West project, and we thought we'd take this on because the last one went so well and we felt that we all worked kind of cohesively together and we were able to do it so quickly and efficiently and to a pretty good standard. So we thought, why not try and push ourselves even more and do an even bigger scene this time? And it's also because as the trimester was sort of continuing on, we realized our other major project might not have been as much work as we anticipated.
Yeah, it's scaled down a lot from our original idea because we had discovered that our original idea wasn't as effective. So as that scaled down, we realized we should probably have more to add to our portfolio.
Yeah,
so
and it freed up some time for us to be able to do this as well.
Yeah. So this scene overall is 2 minutes and 7 seconds long, which is double the size of the Wild Wild West sound replacement we did, but we definitely thought we could take it on because we were planning a lot more studio time than we had originally with the Wild Wild West.
Yep.
Because in that, we would book like 2 weeks in advance, and we would have like maybe 1 or 2 sessions a week. This one, we have consistently minimum like 3 sessions.
Yeah, minimum wait time. There was no real section here where we were up in the air wondering when our next session was going to be or having to book because we were very on top of it. We made sure we had our plans, our asset lists all good to go for this one.
Yeah, sometimes a session would run so well that as we were leaving, we'd look up and be like, hey man, can we book another session before this next one we have booked? Just because we were so into it, but we weren't like into it too much to a point where like we look back the next session and go, what were we thinking?
Yeah. We really struck a good balance.
Yeah.
I feel like as a team, you, Josh, and I, we're really starting to, work efficiently within our roles. We sort of
we've found the good balance. Like Josh definitely, he's a lot more.
He's good at the creative.
He's good at like the Foley aspect. Like he's really into that because he's going into post production.
Yeah.
And then me and Dan are more editing. Dan's a lot more composing.
Yeah,
like,
I do a lot of composing, and then
I can sit down and just smash out editing.
It's great.
So it's a nice little circle of team we've got going on.
It is. It's great. So, and another important thing to note about the project management is that we really didn't have to update the plan at all during this project because we made sure from the get-go we sat down and really scoped out a bunch of scenes to make sure we picked the right one.
Yeah,
one that we wanted to do, one that we would, do from start to finish and not have to change anything halfway through. We really we nailed it on that.
We sat down for a good 4 hours just watching Scott Pilgrim scenes till we found this one that we liked. And I think it was really good that we picked this scene based on the team that we do have, just because we're able to fit the roles. So it's a lot easier to perform the whole thing overall.
We'll talk about that more in the creative section, but that is definitely that was good, sort of considering what our talents were, and then picking a scene around that made working a lot easier. So the other parts of project management that are obviously kind of the more boring bits but the sort of crucial and essential bits is what we learnt from the last project and what I've learnt from previous post-production projects is that video file management inside of the Pro Tools sessions is always a really big pain. So this time we went out of our way at the very start to make sure the video would never sort of disappear on us, especially after we've cut it to size and lined up all our sounds to this very specific video and then have it, kick itself out of the session. And then all of a sudden, when we re-import and we like re-trim the ends in, it doesn't fit anymore. We made sure that didn't happen this time. We did a couple of tests, made sure that upon moving and reopening the session a few times, the video wouldn't disappear, and it hasn't.
Yeah.
So that's been a great learnt sort of lesson for us, and we're taking it on quite well here.
Yeah, another part of that is like backing up and storing our sessions, not just the video, but the entire session, making sure that it's on at least 2 people's Google Drives, a USB, a hard drive, all at once.
Multiple versions too.
Yeah, multiple. Like, we'll always have the previous versions saved just in case the newer version has something messed up or we don't quite like how it is the next time we do open it up. When we first started the project, we were having issues with mysterious missing files. We would bring it to a new place, open it up, and we'd have like 4 missing audio files from playlists that were like the top like our choices from the playlists.
Yeah, it's very strange. I don't think we ever really figured out why that happened.
Because when we looked into the audio files folder, the files were there, so we could re-import them back onto the track. Yeah. And I think eventually we just deleted them from the playlist and then re-imported them back on the track, and they stayed there and were fine.
So, I mean, we did run into problems, but we always had our contingencies. We had the multiple versions. We still had all the audio files. So it's kind of like, even when things went wrong, we were never really deep in it. We always had a way out, which was great, obviously. We sort of speculated, and we thought this might have been the result of too many playlists. We had an inhuman amount of playlists for some of the character voices. And I think it started to expand the session size to sort of uncontrollable levels, and Pro Tools, Mac, Windows might have just started having problems with.
Yeah, we did have one instance where the computer was running ridiculously over time and it crashed.
Yeah.
Sadly, we lost like 2 takes, but we still had a few hours in there. We sat down, re-recorded them, and if anything, we got better takes out of it.
And for the rest, we haven't had that problem since, because we're constantly saving. Yeah. It's just sort of an absence of mind thing that, when things are going well, you don't think about it, but as soon as something goes wrong, you're on it from then on, which is what happened. And we're happy to say that I think project management for this one has been really smooth for such an unexpectedly large undertaking, I think you'd say.
Yeah, we definitely didn't think it would be as big of a project as it is currently. When we started, we thought, hey, little sound replacement, we can smash it out. But then we got really into every detail, and we're really making it probably a higher quality than we did for the Wild Wild West, which was meant to be like our bigger project of that time.
So, project management. Onto the creative decisions. We'll probably start with the recording and mixing techniques and how we got our sounds, what we used, all that jazz. So do you want to take it?
So because we use the NTK mic for the Wild Wild West thing, we're really familiar with it. We like how it sounds. We decided to use it again, just because it's a good microphone overall, as agreed on by all of us. Yeah. And
nice large diaphragm. You can use it for Foley. You can use it for ADR.
Use it for just about anything.
Yeah, you can use it for just about anything.
All right, so we picked this scene and used ourselves as voice actors around the scene, because we felt like our voices kind of fit the characters to an extent, and with our expanded knowledge of pitch manipulation software like Melodyne, where we thought that we'd be able to essentially fix any faults we had with our takes, which we did to success in the case of having
Wallace's character.
Daniel as Wallace, yeah.
Yeah, my voice, it was just a little bit off, so we kind of adjusted the timbre, adjusted the pitch a bit to get the more kind of nasally. My voice is already quite nasally, but just to push it to that extra limit, which is like Wallace's character. He's got quite a nasally voice. But the great thing about the way we cast the scene and really scoping it out ahead of time to save ourselves hassle was Carl already had the perfect voice for Lucas Lee. We tried asking around the cohort to really see if other people might want to take on the role, but we ended up settling on Carl, and it made the whole process really easy because you were invested in the project. You wanted to do the best takes possible.
And because we always have minimum 2 people there, if one of us wasn't there, we could record the other characters' voices, because there would always be the voice actors there. We don't have to.
And of course, Josh did Michael Cera, so it makes sense. We all voiced one of the characters.
We wouldn't have to worry about having like a voice actor just bail last minute or anything, because it was straight down with communication. We knew whether someone wouldn't be there or not. We could plan ahead, even if that was like a last minute change.
Yep.
So
that was basically the process that we took with the ADR section of it. And I think that's something that, like we said, lots of playlists, and we spent a lot of time on it because we wanted to get it right. We really, really we tried to go line for line, really recreate the energy of the original scene, the tone of the characters.
Yeah, one thing we did realize that was with me voicing Lucas Lee was that to put on that voice, I essentially had to make my throat really gravelly and like a bit more like douchey sounding. And what that ended up doing was making me sound like a pirate sometimes if I got too far into that. So for Lucas Lee's character alone, we ended up with over 500 playlists. It was mostly the first two words, the prepare. Yeah. Instead of the prepare, you were doing like the prepare. Yeah. It was interesting. Yeah. We ended up copy pasting the first prepare twice for those people that know what they're talking about. It
was good vocal coaching practice for me and Josh, though, trying to direct you, even though it did get frustrating, but we got there in the end. So
I think even though it took so many playlists, editing on the fly, which definitely is part of
our process,
that industry process as well. Like we would record like a loop record a bunch of playlists, pick the best one as we were recording each line, rather than going through straight away. All 500 playlists
like at
to
the
pick
end
one.
And not remembering. We'd do the topping and tailing. We'd kind of like level it generally, and then we'd move on. So that was that. Moving on to the Foley elements. Again, this is pretty standard. There are a lot of standard things, like footsteps and whatnot, but there are a few really cool ones that we wanted to go over. And the first one was, I guess, the skateboard sound. When Lucas Lee throws down the board and he hops on it. And it's for that, only the few seconds where the wheels are actually touching the ground. We originally planned to get a real skateboard in. That didn't really end up happening because it wasn't the person who was going to bring it sort of fell through for us. So we thought, hey, why not just use the wheels of an office chair and roll them down out the front of SAE with a Zoom recorder. And so that's exactly what we did.
Yeah, it ended up being really good, where we got kind of like the whooshing sound of the seat landing on the floor, rolling, and then picking back up.
Exactly. We didn't even have to add in any extra of the sound when he jumps up, because just the mic picked it up so naturally, and it was great. Yeah. It was awesome.
Just adding that onto the skateboard, like the image of the skateboard, completely took away the office chair sound and made it the skateboard sound.
It was great. And then, we also laid in some wooden textures for like the, what do you call it? Like the deck of the board. Yeah. Just to, elevate it to that next level.
Yeah. And then, of course, after he gets on the skateboard, he jumps up onto the railing and he starts grinding down it. Now for this is a good one. We have 3 different layers for the grinding sound. So first we got 3 pieces of metal. We had like one flat sheet metal, one like little pipe metal, and then one just flat bar.
Yep.
And we took a Zoom recorder out just across the road from campus, actually, onto a railing that is quite long. And Josh scraped the metal on the railing around the whole thing, and I followed it with a Zoom recorder.
Yeah, and he did the same thing that we did with the chair, like with the jumps and the landings.
Like lifting it up, banging it back down. And it definitely gave us a really consistent scrape sound, because that's actually what it was. It wasn't just us getting one sound and then looping it the whole time or anything like we had originally thought of doing, but then decided against, just because it wouldn't have sounded as like genuine.
Yeah.
But so that was only one layer. The other layer that we had was the office chair rolling, just because it added a bit more body to it.
Yeah.
And then to finish it off, to make it sound really epic, we have some funny photos of this if you want to check out some blogs or something that we've written.
Yeah. I think Josh already has one up that explains this.
Yeah, so to get a really low rumbly sound, we got a drum cymbal that it wasn't on a stand or anything. I held it up in front of my face between me and the microphone and blew through the hole at the microphone, and on the right angle it makes a really like hollow sounding like
I think we did some
low end. It sounds, imagine like a skateboard rolling with just the low end. That's what this sound was.
It was great. It gave the whole scene way more impact, and of course when when he's jumping up and down, we cut it off, so when he's in the air there's none of that, and then he hits the rail again and all the body comes back into it, and it's like
it brings a lot more impact, and then makes it when he's in the air it's a lot like whoa,
because
majestic.
Even in the original waveform for the audio of Scott Pilgrim, in that rail grinding scene, the dynamics go insane. It goes from incredibly quiet to ridiculously loud, and so we thought, okay, if they did it, we can get away with it too. So we have everything sort of builds up to a point there, and it gets really loud, and that's one of the major contributing factors is how much just low end energy we put in, because we really wanted to make it sound like if you were Lucas Lee grinding down that rail, or the cameraman following him, all of the wind and really rumbly energy that would be coming at you, smacking you in the face. So that's kind of what we did there.
And then of course, after going down the rail, he hits the ground and explodes. That was an interesting sound to make. So with the scene being all video game themey and stuff.
With the nature of the movie, I guess, the aesthetic of all of Scott Pilgrim.
Yeah, when the Evil X dies, he explodes into a shower of coins.
Yeah.
And essentially for that, we got Josh in with a little baggie of coins.
Yep.
And we got 3 different layers of him just scattering his coins onto the concrete floor we have in the C-24.
Yep.
And layering all these together, some of them had more high end than others, some of them had more low end than others, but having them all there in like stereo kind of sound with some reverb on them to give them some space,
like some distance,
the bottom of the hill kind of exploding up, it definitely added like a really cool like trickling effect to the
and
coins.
Another, like you mentioned with the sort of video gamey sounds, we layered in some like 8-bit sounding explosions onto the actual explosion, just to give it that little bit of a, you may not notice it, but give it that more sort of, pixelated sounding edge.
Yeah.
And as well, when the points come up, that's obviously an 8-bit sound, and that's also heavily reverb, because we wanted to give it the distance, make it sound like
the explosion's being viewed from the top of a cliff and it's at the bottom. It has that delay that's like filling out from that space.
Yeah. So those were the death sounds. Next was the leather of Lucas Lee.
Yeah, his douchebag leather jacket.
That
was originally when we had recorded it, we had it really loud, and listening back was hilarious because every single movement he made, because Josh replicated his movements while wearing a leather jacket, so the movements were almost on point. Like
very little editing needed to be done in that regard.
Except for turning the volume down, because it was really loud.
Originally, we debated having it louder as like a sort of comedic effect, like, oh, the leather jacket is just so over the top, like.
Yeah.
But after getting some feedback and hearing that, other people thought it sounded more like a mistake, we're kind of pulling back on that a bit, and that's fair, Not everybody's going to really understand what we had in our heads, and sometimes it's better to sort of go with what a general audience might think.
It might just be us getting carried away after working on the scene for so long.
Exactly. Next is the punch. The punch is interesting because we actually we followed like a sort of online tutorial to see how we would try and get the punch sound. That involved, slapping steaks, breaking celery, and hitting loaves of bread together, and then manipulating those sounds, through use of pitch shifting downwards to add more body, distorting and layering like 6 layers together to get this really nice, solid, beefy punch sound. Also, we thought.
Yeah, it ended up
not really quite being where we wanted it to be.
Yeah, they were kind of more roomy and a bit more poppy than like hitty. So we have them in there as like a layer to fill out that space in it. But what we actually ended up doing was getting...
This is pretty funny. So during one of my very, very old sound replacement projects, around the start of the year, we made a gunshot and sounded incredibly like a cartoon punch. So we thought back to there, and realized it'd be better than sampling, a punch that somebody else made. At least we'd made it. So we decided to go in and layer that over the top of the sounds we already had, and it was the perfect amount of everything.
Yeah.
It's this nice sort of ridiculously over the top, cartoony, slap sounding, really body heavy punch that was exactly what we wanted.
Yeah, it fits with the video game aesthetic, and considering when Scott gets punched, there's like a little hit marker that appears if you follow the frames. It's kind of like, hey, that fits.
Yeah, that's like a little gamey sort of thing in there, which is awesome. And then on top of that, the last few things were all the novelty sound effects we added to the scene. That was something we really wanted to do because we didn't want to kill the kind of the vibe of the original one. We wanted to carry it on, but do it in a slightly different way. So of course, when Lucas Lee reveals his skate brand tattoo, we have a little guitar lick that goes off, something just ridiculous, comedic for a comedic effect there.
And then there's another part of the scene where Scott is trying to like egg Lucas on to do the skate grind down the cliff.
Yeah.
And the way he does it is says, "Oh, there's girls watching."
Yeah.
And this makes Lucas like pause, and then his eyes quickly shift off into the background. So what we thought we'd do for this is, hey, let's have a bunch of fangirls, right?
Just sighs of bliss, essentially, in the background,
so
just in a really comedic
as
way.
they're starting to talk smack to each other, we have like fangirls quietly in the surrounds,
screaming,
just really quietly screaming.
It's Lucas Lee.
Yeah, and then as he looks at them, all the screaming stops, and you just hear a we thought it's a nice little touch.
Yeah.
On feedback, people seem to like it, even if it's
we had a couple people. Everyone we've shown so far has at least cracked a smile at that. So obviously,
it works.
It works. So we're happy with it. Even though it is like obviously completely unrealistic and it's like fully reverbed and decked out, it fits the aesthetic of the rest of the scene. So in terms of the music, this was interesting because the tense music at the start, it was sort of hard to script, sort of tense, low, droney music to that. So the way I sort of did that was when I was sort of composing the synth parts, I made sure that they'd be easily loopable. So we'd be able to arrange them around the dialogue of the scene and make it ebb and flow instead of creating this, more fully fleshed out track, but then not being able to do anything with it and having it just under the bottom, which is sort of like what we did for Wild Wild West. I wanted to try and make it more interactive with the scene this time, and I think it worked because we were able to go in afterwards, chop it all up, make it fit. And of course the synth I used tried to fit with the sort of gamey aesthetic. I tried to keep it sort of more
like bad guy boss level kind of like.
That's sort of the vibe I went for, and I used more of I didn't use like really clean sounding sine waves. I tried to use more squarey sounding waves to try and give it that aesthetic.
Another thing with the music is, of course, while grinding down the rails. So in the original, it fit a lot more with the video gamey vibe. It was like almost purely electronic music. But as Lucas was going down the rails, we noticed that each time it cuts out and then back into
it's like a new song in a different genre.
Yeah, it wasn't like, it was intense because it started as like cool arcade sound, ended as like some trance crazy thing.
Yeah.
So we thought, hey, we've got this skater vibe with like guitar licks and everything. And we have the of course we also had the synthy sounds and the ambient music, so let's like combine it and let's try and do the music they did better. So what we actually did was we mapped out from start to finish with a sort of little beeping sound to match the speedometer. The speedometer in the top corner. And I took that back so I knew the duration of the clip length, and I composed a piece of singular music that is consistent within itself and the themes of the overall arching theme of the Scott Pilgrim show. And I composed one run-on piece of music that doesn't cut between genres, that just fits over the whole thing and slowly speeds up and gets more intense, but keeps its themes. So the way I did that was, of course, I used a lot of guitar and bass elements because Scott's the bass player in his fictional band in the movie, and so I thought, let's make that a really
a really loud, loud distorted bass in there. Done. That was one thing. Of course, after that, we used the guitar licks over the top. We wanted to make it a mad shred solo because that's sort of, we already used that one little lick to characterize Lucas earlier on. So why not use it now for the rest of the song while he's skating? And we can sort of have the bass and guitar clash at the end when it kind of moves away from being in key to more of a chromatic mess. It's sort of like the battle between Scott and Lucas
where
in music
Lucas
form.
Is losing control down the hill.
Exactly, because the shredding
crazy,
starts to get very, very out of control. And of course Scott's bass bit does too, but that's only to make the whole thing feel a bit more intense. And then because the original had that sort of gamey vibe and we already had the sort of gamey sounds in there, I decided to just add a synth lead over the top at the start, and I was really happy with it all, with the way it all churned out. Added the drum bits in, mixed it, did a little rough master, and it was ready to blend in. And lo and behold, thanks to our preparation with the little ticking sound, measuring the length of it, it fit in quite well.
Yeah, we
almost
just dropped
perfectly.
it on the track, moved it a little bit, and it was almost entirely spot on.
All right. So that was that. Mixing, just general mixing, it required a lot of EQ, specifically for the low end, because even though we wanted a heavy low end, a lot of it was like really like a little bit too much when played through a sub, and it was just starting to sound messy. And things like, dynamic levelings for different shots. We wanted, different sounds to be accentuated for different shots. Like, for example, when Lucas goes out over the railing and the slapback echoes on his voice, and he's like, there are like 200 steps. We actually turn down his footsteps and his like belt and everything, obviously, because he's further away in that shot. Just small things like that really we thought were like the bread and butter of the scene. It made it feel more real.
Yeah, so when it came to the actual quality of our recordings, yet again, as part of the C24 recording booth, there's a lot of like hum from the room,
and
from
bleed
from other rooms and everything.
That.
So that's just a general thing by now, is trying to take those elements out of our recordings. But this time around with our ADR, because the voices sometimes are a lot more pronounced in how they speak, especially with Lucas Lee. Some of them, to get my vocals to that point, I had to stand back a bit from the mic, and that obviously picks up a bit more of the room
And you were
sound.
getting into it as well. You were moving around with the character, and you were getting more authentic takes.
Yeah.
But of course, like you said, that came with its disadvantages.
So using Isotope D Reverb, another one of the great D
plugins.
It definitely helped to clean up everything. It takes him out of the room we recorded it in and allows us to reverb him to make him sound like he's in the room that he's in.
Well, in the environment that he's in.
The environment that is in, yeah. And after looking through some of the takes, when we were editing in the C24, we never had any issues with the ADR, but taking it to the S6 studio, I guess the speakers are a lot higher quality. Everything sounds a lot better.
Blemishes.
Yeah, there's quite a few pops specifically in Lucas Lee's vocals just because he is so in your face. And I feel like I got in the microphone's face while acting. So using Audio Suite with an EQ with like a low end shelf off of it on specific plosives was able to like fix that issue entirely. All plosives were taken out. Vocals are clean and everything. We got feedback from lecturers saying specifically that our ADR is
pretty spot on.
Like, spot on.
Obviously,
really
the effort paid off, and that obviously feels good. And then just general track cleaning, like I said, taking out a lot of the low end, especially like Carl said, a lot of the times we're really up on the mic, so that was something that came through a lot in what we recorded, and especially through the large diaphragm condenser. Picks up a lot more of that low end. But onto the surround sound. You did a lot of this. Do you want to talk about this?
Well, because this project is in 5.1, so 4 speakers around you, 1 in the center, and then the sub. So when it came to this, we thought it would be really cool to like fully immerse the viewer in what was going on around them, and this required like quite a bit of automation, but especially when Lucas is going down the rail, we decided to have like what rail he is on pan like while we're watching it.
Yep.
So we decided to only do it with like the higher frequency as he goes down the rail because
your ears follow the high frequencies better.
So, and we didn't want to take away too much of the impact from the center while he goes down it.
We wanted to keep the low end as full as it could be. And like we had, you know how we had the three layers, and the middle one was like a mid-range layer. We just kept that one in stereo.
Yeah.
We were covering all our bases, making this scene sound as huge as possible.
Yeah. So with the automation, essentially just tracking where he is on the board and like on the rail and where he is in the shot. So he'll jump on the rail and be on like the left one, so I'll pan it left. But then in the next shot, he'll be center, so I'll pan it from left to center, and then he'll jump from the left one to the right one, and I'll pan it from left to right as he goes.
Yeah, around.
I would make sure to do it as he jumps up and then as he lands, so it's in time and everything. Nothing sounds weird. I think overall that was done really well, because even now I listen to it and I didn't even notice it. It just feels like it should be that way.
Natural. And the one other thing we added into the surrounds during that scene that we almost forgot was that we added little spark sounds, because there's lots of sparks coming off his board, and we thought it'd sound cool if there were sparks sort of coming backwards, coming from the front, you know, traveling backwards.
Yeah, starting
while you're
from
sitting there,
front left and right, going to
into
back
the back
left
surrounds.
and right.
Yeah, into the back surrounds. So it sounds like, you know, the scene is moving around you. All these sparks are actually flying at you.
Yeah.
Which is cool.
So with it being surround sound, it's good to have your rear speakers for Atmos. We use this quite a bit in After the Punch, which is where the stereo really opens up. We filled it with some crowd chatter when people are behind them. We've got some more
camera flashes.
Camera flash, wind noises. And then specifically when Scott and Lucas look down the cliff to see how long it is, we have like a rumble from how deep the cliff is, and then like some wind whistling from either side. And then instead of having the vocal, like the line that he says in the center for that one, we put it on its own 5/1 track and put it like the center front.
Yeah.
But like slightly back.
Yeah,
and
like
then,
dead center of the room.
Yeah, and then chucked a slapback echo on it, so that actually gets put into the backs as well.
Yeah.
It just makes, instead of it being reverbed in the center, it's reverbed in everything.
It kind of makes you feel like you are where the camera is positioned in that shot.
Yeah.
Like we're mixing from the camera's perspective there.
And so that kind of aesthetic was also passed on to the music and the railing sounds when Lucas is actually grinding down.
And that was one of the reasons why we picked the clip too, because we thought, oh, wouldn't it be cool?
So while Lucas is going down the rail, there's shots where it cuts back to Scott at the top of the hill, and he's just saying, "Wow." And we decided, we're like, in the original, everything completely cuts out, and we're like, oh, he's just saying "wow."
Yeah.
And because of how intense the music is, it's kind of jarring when it cuts back.
Yeah.
From there being nothing at all. So taking advantage of doing surround sound, we decided that every time it cut back to Scott saying "wow," we would have the grinding and
the
music
filtered, like to sound weaker coming out of the back speakers.
Yeah, like purely from the back speakers whenever it cut to Scott, because
that's the way he's orientated, facing the rail. You know, and for the way the camera shot,
it almost made it sound like the music was following Lucas.
Yeah,
in like
it's a great way. Exactly, because it makes it sound like he's, you know, all up intense, up in his face, and then from Scott's view, he's like, oh wow. Yeah. He's like not that impressed, and the music's all like lame sounding off in the distance. No like body, no like nice high, and it's just sort of all mid range. And whatnot.
Even if it doesn't like make it sound way more epic or anything, it definitely helps to fill out the scene and
for sure.
solidifies where you are as a listener rather than just cutting between two positions. It shows you where everything is.
The whole idea is it immerses you as like the camera in that situation, as the observer.
Yeah. So overall, this project isn't done, by the way. We're about one session away. We just need to
finish up the mix and the master.
Finish the mix and master, yeah. So right now, as a team, we're really happy. Like, we finish every session just like, whoa, yeah.
Overall, like the aesthetics, I think we really, it was worth sitting down and thinking about them, because we really tried to capture a little bit of what the original brought with the sort of gamey sounds, a little bit of what we injected into it with our sort of like the more like douchier, rockier guitar sort of sounds, and all of the extraneous like little comedic effects that we tried to add in. Like we really had a clear aesthetic that we were aiming for this one.
Yeah, and with the master and everything, we're still planning to master to the -24 LUFS, like always, the standard for the industry.
The punch and that last sort of rail bit will probably jump a little higher than that, but that's cool because that's for impact effect.
Yeah, and as of right now, we have gotten 2 of our 3 lecturers to look at it, and one of them loved it. The other one gave us very minimal feedback. Like one sound was slightly too loud, and the other one was slightly too quiet. So
it's reassuring right now. It means we don't have to focus on fixing things. We just get to focus on improving things during the master, and it's going to be awesome. So thanks for tuning into one more of the podcasts. As usual, references to some of the ideas that we've discussed will be in the description. And
laters.